So the UN doesn't follow its own rules. It talks about fair remuneration to ensure the dignity of a human being, but its own interns have had to live in tents and basements. Hi everyone, welcome to the Humane Factor. Are you thinking of a career in diplomacy or public policy? Would you like to work in the United Nations? Well, according to the UN's website, an internship program at the United Nations would be an ideal start for anyone who'd love a career in international diplomacy. Take a look at what the UN website says with regard to whether you've got what it takes to be a UN intern. Now, they've listed 3 things. 1, you must be enrolled in a university program or should have graduated within the last year. 2, you must have an excellent command of English or French. And 3, you shouldn't be a child or a sibling of a UN Secretariat staff member. Sounds simple, right? So, when a UN internship that perfectly aligns with your qualifications and interests arises, you're tempted to apply for it. But wait a minute. Before you click on that button to apply, you have to know that there is a hidden expectation when it comes to UN internships. Kind of like how buying an iPhone 12 comes with the hidden expectation of buying a charger or using your old one because Apple doesn't give you chargers anymore. So this hidden expectation for UN internships can be framed this way. Did you just win the lottery, or do you belong to a rich family who would be willing to cover all the expenses during your internship? If the answer to this question is no, then you shouldn't waste your time, because most UN organizations do not pay their interns at all. Now, every year, the United Nations hosts thousands of interns around the world. These internships are full-time and generally for a duration of 2 to 6 months. And many of these internships are in some of the most expensive cities in the world, like New York, Geneva, and Vienna. But how on earth is a person supposed to survive for 2 to 6 months without any pay? Now take a look at UN interns talking about their experiences.
I'm an intern, and I think that most of us, like people who intern in international organizations with internships that are not paid, sometimes struggle to be successful, to have enough budget to survive, in, especially here in Geneva, in one of the most expensive cities in the world. My budget is from my parents, from my personal savings, and from the stipend that my university provides every month. And of course, without the stipend from my university, it would be impossible for me to be here.
Now, a UN policy document from 2000 states that interns are not to be financially remunerated. They aren't given health care, food allowance, medical insurance, or any workplace benefit whatsoever. If you are thinking, well, so what if it isn't paid? I live on ramen for 6 months and use my internship as an opportunity to network and nail an employed position within the UN after my internship is over. Think again. According to the rules, an intern cannot be employed by a UN agency for 6 months after their internship program has ended. Now, ironically, Article 23 of the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights advocates for equal pay for work. It literally states everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity. So the UN doesn't follow its own rules. It talks about fair remuneration to ensure the dignity of a human being, but its own interns have had to live in tents and basements. Now, the UN claims that one of its core values is diversity, but this system clearly discriminates against underprivileged people from developing countries and low income families. And it also directly contributes towards deepening social inequalities. Now, by not paying its interns, the UN is reducing the pool of potential applicants to only those who are wealthy enough to work for free. Take a look at one of its latest job postings. This unpaid position is for 3 months and requires you to work 40 hours a week. Now, it's almost laughable how the UN doesn't even bother to camouflage its hypocrisy. Right above the job posting, it lists one of its core values as respect for diversity, while its internship program is anything but that. That's like the Oscars listing respect for diversity as one of its core values, the same day it gives away all its awards to white people. Now, a recent survey conducted by Fair Internship Initiative, an organization that advocates for remunerated internships within the UN system, revealed that around 78% of the internships in the UN are unpaid and only 11% of the interns are paid. Now, the survey also identified that 64% of unpaid interns come from high income families, while 22% come from upper middle income families, and 12% come from lower middle income families. So, it's quite clear that the UN appears to promote a labor practice that discriminates against the poor and favors the rich. Now, the UN touts that these internships are a learning experience. But to what extent is this true? Now, it's been reported that these unpaid internships are used by the UN as a cost cutting tool to replace junior employees so that junior roles can be reduced and the job can be done for free by interns instead. Ironically, the UN World Report in 2016 condemned unpaid internships for the exact same reason, that they are being used by organizations to replace the work of regular paid workers. The UN is truly a paradox. Now, UN interns who don't receive financial support for internships are generally forced to take on other paid gigs to support their internships. Now, they work in bars, restaurants, or take on other odd jobs. And doing this on the side while working full time 40 hours a week is very likely to lead to a burnout or impact their mental health. Now, unpaid internships at the United Nations first received public attention in 2015 when David Hyde, a Geneva based intern, was found living in a tent because he couldn't afford the city's high rents. Now, take a look at this clip where David Hyde talks about his beliefs on unpaid work.
After graduating, I began to apply for jobs, but all I could really find was internships. And in every interview, the same questions always came up towards the end. Can you afford to fully fund yourself for the duration of this internship? When I answered this with the honest no, my application was declined. And so when I applied for this role with the UN, I did not fully disclose my true financial situation. I said I had enough to support myself when really I didn't, and I got the job. The UN was clear about their internship policy from the start. No wage or stipend, no transport help, no food allowance, no health assistance. At this stage, I think that the focus needs to move away from me. Interns all over the world need to come together and push for the recognition of our value and our equal rights that we deserve. Because, as the Declaration of Human Rights states so clearly, everyone without discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Everyone who works has the right to just and favourable remuneration. I hope to see the United Nations become a role model for all on the issue of internships in the future. Thank you.
But there is some hope. Since David's stint, at least two UN agencies, the UNICEF and the United Nations Refugee Agency, have started paying their interns. Now, Fair Internship Initiative has also been ardently campaigning for interns' rights, and interns have been organizing protests demanding to be paid fairly. Several individuals have taken to Twitter to call the UN out on its unfair labor practices in response to the UN's unpaid internship adverts. Take a look at some of these tweets. Now, all these efforts have made a difference. Some UN organizations, like the World Health Organization, have started paying its interns. Many UN officials have also called for a complete overhaul of internal UN policy documents. But if we are starting to see some change in terms of UN organizations starting to pay interns, why am I bringing this up now? Well, because COVID has brought in a fresh set of challenges with remote working. When COVID hit us last year, the UN made its internships remote. Now, the Fair Internship Initiative started noticing a trend of remote unpaid internships being advertised even by UN agencies that would normally provide stipends. Now, they've expressed concern that what sought to be a temporary measure might become the new normal. The UN's logic is if people are working remotely from their homes in different parts of the world, they don't have to incur living costs in expensive cities, right? And therefore, they don't have to be paid, right? Well, the Fair Internship Initiative identified several reasons remote unpaid internships are problematic. I'll talk about two issues that I think are most important. First, unpaid remote internships would further expand the use of unpaid work in terms of replacing junior staff and consultancy positions with unpaid ones. Interning remotely also decreases opportunities for the training component that makes internships the so-called learning experience they should be. Now, the nature of their work will be on a delivery basis and therefore equivalent to an unpaid consultancy or freelance work. Second, remote unpaid internships would deepen economic inequalities by widening the gap between those who can afford unpaid face-to-face internships and those who cannot. In that sense, remote unpaid internships would become second-class internships, while face-to-face internships would be accessible only to those who can afford it. And remote unpaid internships do not take away the problem of interns having to take on other jobs to pay their bills. Because, a person has got to eat and put a roof over their heads, irrespective of where they live. So, interns who can't afford to work for free will still have to take on paid gigs while simultaneously clocking 40 hours for their unpaid work at the UN. So, I think it's very important that we speak out against these unfair practices, especially because voicing our concern has made a difference in terms of UN agencies slowly starting to pay interns. But it doesn't end there. with new remote working challenges brought on by COVID, we have to revisit this issue and make sure that COVID isn't used as an excuse to normalize unethical labor practices. So I hope you like this video. Please hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for videos every Wednesday and Saturday. See you soon.